Today we're looking at 4.2, and in 4.2 we're multiplying and dividing rational expressions. Now remember, rational expressions are just fractions that have polynomials on the top and bottom, so that means we're going to end up doing a lot of factoring. So the rules for multiplying rational expressions are the same as the rules for multiplying fractions. You multiply the numerators, so that's our first step. And then we multiply the denominators. So we just multiply straight across. When we would do 2 over 3 times 4 over 7, you just multiply straight across. 2 times 4 is 8, 3 times 7 is 21. Here we see that same thing happens. We multiply straight across. A times C is AC, B times D is BD. Let's look at example 1. We're going to multiply straight across. 6 times 3, 18. R squared times R squared, that gives us R to the 4th. Remember, here we're using our exponent rules. 2 plus 2 is 4. 5 times 7 is 35. S to the 3rd times S, that gives us an S to the 4th. And let's go ahead and check. Do we have anything we can reduce? 18 and 35 we can't reduce. And then R to the 4th and S to the 4th we can't reduce. So this is our answer. Let's go ahead and look at example 2. Looking at example 2, I notice that I have some polynomials now, c minus 1, 3c minus 3. And our question whenever we see a polynomial is it factored? So c minus 1, I can't do anything to that. 3c minus 3, here I can factor that to 3 times c minus 1. I have a GCF of 3. Let's go ahead and multiply. We multiply straight across. So we're going to do 4 times c minus 1. And I'm not going to distribute it. So I'm not going to do my distribution. I'm just going to leave it like that for now. I'm going to leave it in factored form. Here I have 2 times 3. I can multiply those and get 6. And then I have a c minus 1. Now the reason I left it in factored form is I noticed that I have a c minus 1 on the top and on the bottom. So I can divide those out. They divide and equal 1. For the 4 over 6, I can divide those both by 2. So that becomes a 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So I'm left over after I simplified with 2 over 3. There are 2 methods for simplifying rational expressions. We can simplify first and then multiply, or multiply first and then simplify. Let's go ahead and do number 3. I'm going to do the pink one. I'm going to simplify and then multiply. But before we do either of those, we have to factor. So for number 3, I notice I have 1, 2, 3 polynomials. So we have to factor the top. Go ahead and find those factors. You have to factor the bottom. And then when I look at the next fraction, we have to factor x squared plus 2x minus 3. So go ahead and factor those 3. For the top, multiply to 1 is 1 and 1. And then 1x plus 1x is 2x, so that works. The bottom's a difference of squares, so that's plus 1 minus 1. And then let's see, we want to multiply to 3 and then subtract to 2, so that's going to be a 3 and a 1. 3 times 1 is 3. I want a positive 2, so the bigger number is going to be positive. So that gives me a positive 3x and a negative x. Now this polynomial is over 1, so I'm going to write it over 1. So we had to factor first. Now we can see which pieces divide out. I notice I have x plus 1 and an x plus 1. So you can pick either of them to cross out. I'm going to cross out this one and this one. I also have an x minus 1 on the top over here and an x minus 1 on the bottom here. So we're allowed to cross out if it's on the top. One's on the top and one's on the bottom. And I'm left with x plus 1, so now we're multiplying, times x plus 3. So again, factor first. Then we crossed out the same factors on the top and the bottom. And then we multiplied. And you're allowed to leave it in this factored form. You don't actually have to multiply that out. Let's look at number 4. So again, our first step should be to factor. Let's see. I can't factor this, I can't factor this, I can't factor this, I can factor the bottom. I have a GCF of 4, so I'm going to take out a 4, and I get a negative c, because 4 times negative c is negative 4c, and a positive 4. Now I notice that these two are very similar. If I take out a negative, that will make this one positive and that one negative, and now they're the same. So I took out the negative in order to make them the same. Let's go ahead and cross things out. We're going to cross out same factors top and bottom. I have a c minus 4 on the top here, c minus 4 on the bottom. I have a 45 and a 5, so I can reduce these. 5 goes into 45 9 times. So let's see what I'm left with. On the top, I'm left with a 9. On the bottom, I'm left with a 1 times a negative 4. And so that is my final answer. Now we're going to go to division. Whenever you're dividing, remember KFC. So this is what we need to remember, KFC. Keep the first fraction, flip the second fraction, change to multiplication. Let's go ahead and do that. We're going to keep the first fraction, that's okay. We're going to flip the second fraction, that's our F. And we're going to change from division to multiplication. Now we're a multiplication problem just like 1 through 4. Step 1, we're going to factor. What can we factor? I can't factor x plus 4. I can't factor 6x squared. 3x plus 12. Here I have a GCF of 3. So let's go ahead and take out a 3. So I have a 3 times x plus 3 times 4 gives me 12. Now I can cross out factors on the top and the bottom. I have an x plus 4 and an x plus 4, so those can cross out. I have a 6 and a 3, so I can reduce those. 3 goes into 6 2 times. What am I left with on the top? Nothing here, so that's a 1. So I have a 2x squared. And then on the bottom, I'm left with just 1, so I don't have to put anything. For example 6, we're dividing again. So go ahead and do our first step of keep, flip, change. And write that out. So remember, we're keeping the first fraction, flipping the second, changing to multiplication. I'm flipping the second, and then I'm changing to multiplication. Now I want you to factor the top, bottom, let's see. We can factor this trinomial, this one, and this one has a GCF. So go ahead and pause the video so that they can factor those. The top one factors to x plus 4, x plus 2. 4 times 2 is 8. 4x, 2x gives me 6x. The bottom one, x plus 2, x minus 1. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. 2x, negative x, positive x. And then I can factor out a 2. Let's see, 2x, and then plus 2 will give me 4. And then I have this x plus 4 down here. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it. So I have x plus 4 times x plus 2 over x plus 2 times x minus 1 times, let's see, that one became 2 times x plus 2. And then I have x plus 4. Or you can just kind of keep that up there and cross those out and not think about it. Okay. What do I have the same on the bottom and top? I have an x plus 4 on the bottom and top. X plus 2 on the bottom and top. Nothing to 2 and not an x plus 2. So my final answer is 2 times x plus 2 over x minus 1. I want you now to try number 7 on your own, and then we'll go over it. Go ahead and pause the video so that they can try it. So number 7, we're going to keep flip the second, change to multiplication. This top piece is a difference of squares. Square root of 1 is 1. Square root of n squared is n. 1 plus, 1 minus. And again, if you want to write it on top, you can. The bottom here doesn't factor. Here, I have a GCF of n. N squared divided by n is n. Negative 4, n divided by n is negative 4. And then I have n minus 1. I'm looking and I see that my ends can divide out, they cross out. I'm also noticing that these two are very similar. They're the opposite. So I can take out a negative 1. So I'm going to make a negative out here. We've got a plus, got a minus. I have a positive and negative 1, so they cross out. But they only crossed out when I took out that negative. So my final answer, I have negative 1 plus n times n minus 4. Example 8. Now I know this one looks scary. We have a fraction over a fraction. Since I have this top fraction, I have this bottom fraction, so this is telling me to divide. So this is the same as the problem, 1 over x plus 4 divided by 2x squared over 2x plus 8. So we're going to use our keep flip change. Go ahead and try this one. Pause the video so that they can have some time to work this one out. So now that you've had some time, we're going to keep the first, flip the second, change to multiplication. Let's go to our factoring step. I can't factor the 1. I can't factor the x plus 4. Here I have a GCF of 2. So that's going to give me an x. 2x divided by 2 is x. And that's going to give me a 4. And then I can't factor the bottom. So remember, we keep flip change, factored. Now we're going to simplify. I have an x plus 4 and an x plus 4, so we're on the simplifying step. I have 2 divided by 2. What's left? I have 1 on top over x squared. And we're not going to do number 9. We're going to stop at number 8. So just to kind of go over it again, if you're dividing, keep flip change, then we factor, simplify, multiply.